and welcome from my little reading space here in Vienna. My name is Luise, I'm a literature student and writer, and I want to welcome you to a little book talk because I completely forgot to make this kind of video, and I have read so many fantastic books and also lots of books that I absolutely didn't enjoy, some DNFs, and I thought it would be a nice moment to, discuss some literature. My reading year started off very strong with the book Orbital by Samantha Harvey. The book fell into my hands at the public library where I work, and I absolutely fell in love with it. The book captures a space mission with astronauts who are in the space shuttle and their perspective on Earth. And it is really not plot driven, but more about the atmosphere and everything they see and feel. The story is very dense and packed with beautiful imagery, and you can roll around all these thoughts in your head while reading and unfold the picture of the Earth from space, which is very well crafted. It made me sit in awe and also gave me a kind of eerie feeling of what the purpose of life is. So it gets a little philosophical here. I made some notes, I'm going to read it to you. How can I even exist? And what does it actually contain, this existence? Why are we able to reflect at all? Why are we able to have these thoughts, to comprehend these things, but never fully? Why are we limited in our thinking and imagining, so we will never grasp infinity to its core or get all of the answers? What is knowledge there for, other than to go insane because there are not enough answers to our questions? And if there were, we probably wouldn't be able to comprehend. That's all the philosophical aspects that just opened up for me, and I already said that I had this kind of eerie feeling, also the feeling of nostalgia, maybe even anxiety about this endlessness of what we call our universe, where there are still so many mysteries and questions. It's all going to vanish. So what's the point of our existence? I really wrote that down here, and I have had those thoughts so many times before, and this book just brought them up again. And the interesting thing is that on the back you often have, most of the time with English books, you have those quotes of recommendations from famous authors or magazines. I think this is really stupid because I don't really care what, the New York Times or the Guardian says about a book, because the quotes get so useless anyways, because it's the same every single time. It's like, this book is brilliant. Okay, but on Orbital it said, an uplifting book in every sense by The Guardian. And maybe I have misunderstood something, but uplifting is something positive. And this book wasn't positive for me. Like I said, it opened up very deep-rooted fears and thoughts, not in a bad way. There is also this image at the end where they are in this spacecraft and they know that it won't be here forever, and also there are tiny cracks and it will waste, and that there is so little that separates the people in the spacecraft from space outside that would be so deadly for them. And all of these thoughts just made me very, take a step back and be like, wow, it's such an experience to be alive and to be a human. Okay, let's get to the point. There's one more thing that I was thinking about, because at school we had this thought experiment about a pig and a human being. So the question was, I think we talked about this probably in philosophy or ethics or something, and the idea is, or the question is, the needs of a pig are a lot easier fulfilled than from a human. But on the other hand, a human has the experience of knowledge and of everything the human brain is capable of, and also awareness, etc. But the human being is not easily satisfied or happy because it's always striving for more. And the question was, would you rather be a pig that is happy and easier fulfilled, or a human being with all the possibilities that humans have, but probably never at 100% of their happiness and satisfaction? And everyone in my class was super quick to answer with, of course I want to be a human, I don't want to be a pig. And I was like, I'm not so sure about this because honestly, taking into consideration factors such as anxiety or depression, if you are at a point in your life where happiness and satisfaction are so far away that you're like, I can't even imagine what it feels like anymore, having a life where you don't have to go through the feeling of depression would be kind of okay for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but this came all up while reading this book because I was questioning our whole existence. And obviously, I don't know what it's like to be a pig, but I would suggest that it might not be so bad not to have the capability to think the way a human thinks. I'm just going to let this stand here. Let's move on to the next book. So this was definitely a 5 out of 5. We move on to the book Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I am a fan of this author. I already read Babel. I already read the book Babel, which was just brilliant. I loved it. And Yellowface is very different, and I also had some difficulties with it. The thing is, it tells the story about a writer, and she's not very successful, but she has a friend, or more like a colleague, and she is a bestseller novelist. And in the presence of the main character, the novelist dies. The main character then finds an unfinished manuscript of that bestseller author, and it is mostly just notes for a plot and for a story that hasn't been written yet or not like fully fleshed out. So she finds this manuscript and takes it home, and then the whole debacle begins because she claims it as her own idea and she publishes it under her own name without giving credits to the actual author. There is another layer of the story because the story that the manuscript is about is set in China, but the author who steals the manuscript is a white person. So the whole question of cultural appropriation goes on, and the thing is, the main character is really unlikable. So you read a story about a character that is morally very questionable, and you are kind of like, what are you doing? This is so annoying. But at the same time, it is so well written that you still want to follow her, and that even sometimes you start to question whether it's really that bad to do certain things. And I always love that when you all of a sudden get a little bit shaken in your own views and norms. I didn't end the book thinking, yeah, it's great to steal a manuscript and make it your own. But it was just very interesting to read. And the only thing that I didn't love was the ending. I thought it was a little bit unsatisfying. It feels like it just fades out, and I really wanted to have some, I don't know, not a big bang, but just something meaningful that happens. But that wasn't the case. Moving on to quite a lot of DNFs this year. So I had the idea to read lots of different genres that I normally don't gravitate towards. And I'm still in the middle of this little experiment, but the books that I have read so far didn't really spark anything, and I didn't love them. So a lot of them were in the genre, or like, I don't know if it's a genre, but the category of, cozy literature. Things like The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, Legends and Lattes, and what was the third one? Hyunam Dong Bookshop. And they are supposed to be like really easygoing and comfy and cozy, and it's not like groundbreaking, but you feel it's like Gilmore Girls. It's like reading Gilmore Girls, and I love Gilmore Girls, but reading these stories it was just boring. Another one in this category was romance books, and I read Funny Story by Emily Henry because it's all over the place, and I thought, like, what's the hype about? I personally don't understand the hype. I am, however, going to make a separate videos where I talk about different genres that I usually don't read. Then I came across a book that I really enjoyed. It's called Echtzeitalter by Tonio Schachinger, who is an Austrian author. I'm afraid there's no English translation. If you are able to read German, check out this book. It's really great. It's a coming-of-age novel about a Viennese student who is a gamer, and he plays Age of Empires. This reminded me strongly of the book Tomorrow, Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this as well in a second. And it was so nice to be invited into this world of gaming, because I'm not a gamer myself, but I really loved reading about this. And it tells about the different friends he has. And it sounds all very simple, but it has Austrian humor, and it was lovely to read about so many different places that are set in Vienna. And it also has a certain melancholic tone to it, and I think this is something that you find quite often in Austrian literature, that it's sometimes brutally honest and harsh, but still working with humor, and it has this kind of nostalgic, melancholic undertone to it. So that's how I would describe it. And I already mentioned Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. There are definitely similarities. It's about young people going through their adolescence and, you know, becoming adults, and with everything that encounters. It's about love. There are some very beautiful love stories in there, very touching as well. So Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow was actually quite sad as well. There are a few aspects where I was like, I didn't want this to happen, in a sense where I feel like the story didn't need this much drama, especially towards the second half of the book. The book also opened up some very interesting thoughts about cultural appropriation, gave it a little bit of a twist. One of the main characters who develops games with his colleagues and friends together, so that's the whole premise of the book. They're game developers and life happens around them. And yeah, he is mixed raced and he is Jewish and Korean. And then he says in a very provocative way that cultural appropriation is nothing other than a world where everyone only represents their own culture. I have to look down to my notes, so I'm not going to say anything wrong. He's saying things like Europeans only represent white people, Asians only Asian people, etc. But isn't that an oversimplification? The character is mixed raced, so in that world, he wouldn't exist. He is half whole, neither full Jewish nor Korean, but if he creates a game with a Japanese figure in it, it isn't okay. So that's the whole debate, that him and his friend, they create a game with a Japanese figure in it. And I found this idea quite interesting because I've talked about this issue before about cancel culture. I made a video about this, and I think it's really difficult to talk about this on social media because there are so many directions that you can be misunderstood. One more thing I want to say about this book is there are 2 German words that they describe and they get the meaning wrong. I don't know how this happened. So one word is the word Zweisamkeit. In the book, it is described as the feeling of being alone even when you are with other people. But that is not the meaning of Zweisamkeit. Zweisamkeit, it contains the word two, which means 2 people being together and enjoying their time, just the 2 of them, often in a harmonic or romantic way without any disruptive other people involved. And then there was another German word, Torschlusspanik, and it means being too late to something or missing the right moment, which was the correct usage of the word. It just was something that I came across because it is written in English and then they use these 2 German words. When you read it, you know that Zweisamkeit means a different thing. Okay, last but not least, I have to say one more thing. The perspectives are really good in this book. And I also wrote down that when it shifts to second person, this is like some kind of out-of-body experience reading it, which suits the scene very well. I'm not going to say more because that would be a spoiler. You have to read it yourself. I'm briefly going to mention 2 more DNFs. I wanted to read those books. I wanted to like those books because everyone talked about them. First one is, I'm not sure what the English title is. I think it's Your Cold Hands. Deine kalten Hände by Kang. I wanted to read a book by Kang, who was the Nobel Prize winner in literature in 2024, and I thought this would be cool to read something. I started reading it or listened to it as an audiobook. Maybe it wasn't the right time, so if any one of you has read it, let me know what you thought about it because I was really confused. I really couldn't concentrate, so I DNF'd it. And another DNF was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I started watching the series, which I kind of liked, but I also had my troubles with it. And then I thought I should read the book and see how this is written, but I did not get far. I was so bored. And I know that so many people love it, and I do see why. I definitely have to give the series some credits because I think it was absolutely beautifully made. The aesthetics, The cinematography was wonderful. I also think worth mentioning are the intimate scenes that are very aesthetic. And the thing is, the lack of communication and the troubles are so unrelatable to me that it is just a little bit too much, where I just wasn't able to follow them anymore, if that makes sense. And I just wasn't really interested, even though I love the cast. I love how they executed it, but it wasn't for me. There are 2 more books that I want to mention. The first one was a surprise. I also came across it in the library. I was stamping new books that we had gotten, and then I held this book in hands. It was called Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell, and it looked like this sci-fi novel, maybe for a little bit of a younger audience. But then I started reading and I fell into this story and really loved it. I think this year is really under the motto of space. And I read so many science magazines because I was on the train quite a lot. And then I always love to get some science magazines, and very often about space because it's just something I'm really interested in. Also listening to a lot of podcasts about this topic. So anyways, it's a sci-fi situation. There are lots of different planets, and the main character is kind of this troublemaker. Here they call it a romantic space adventure, which is very fitting. So I do read romance, just not Emily Henry. Some of the characters have telepathic powers, which is illegal to use. Not all of the characters have that. And there are also other characters that kind of are able to manipulate your actions, as far as I remember. And there is a love story between 2 guys, and it was so nicely told. I suggested this book to my book club, but my friends weren't that into it because the world building is really confusing at the beginning. Yeah, that's definitely a downside. I wrote down that the characters were very interesting, and I loved their slow burning love story. It wasn't over the top, and it had some very nice plot twists. Hello, this is Editing Me, and I just want to hop in because I didn't mention one very interesting part of this book, because all the characters that aren't yet introduced and where we don't know their gender, they are addressed in the book with they them pronouns. And in English this works very fine. It kind of blends in. And then I was interested in how did they do it in the German translation, because the German language and the whole gender situation is very difficult. In the book I checked in the German translation and they used a different pronoun, xier, which is kind of this mixture of she and him. And this is very weird to read because it's just a new word. I guess you get kind of used to it. I'm not going to dive deep into this. This would be a whole separate video, the gender debate, especially in German, but I just want to point it out that this is part of this book and just interesting reading. All right, the only book that I have here as a printed copy is Zitronen. English title would be Lemons, by the Austrian author Valerie Fritsch. Unfortunately, there is no English translation yet. The story is remarkable. I also saw her talk about the story at a reading. The overall topic is violence in all its shapes and forms. Where we get to see this the most is the relationship between the mother and his son, the main character. She is making him sick with this kind of medication, so she's able to take care of him. And there are also lots of other layers of violence in this book. You need to be able to handle that while reading it. The author, Valerie Fritsch, talked about the way she did research for this book. She even went to a morgue and also into a prison and talked to inmates in there to fully dive into the topic of violence. So I think that's a very interesting approach in writing. And the special thing is Valerie Fritsch's language. It is very condensed. Every sentence is some sort of picture or metaphor. I think the topic of violence was sometimes a little bit too much in your face. I could have had it a little bit more subtle, but still very remarkable. I love her language. I love the way she describes characters and plots. It is time to finish my tea, and I'll see you next time with probably a video about the salt mines, where I visited the mines in my hometown. So if you're interested in that, because I'm writing a novel about the salt mines, etc. And if you are able to help me financially, you can check out my coffee account where you can buy me a coffee. It is linked down below. I'm just so happy about every one of you who is following me, even after a little bit of a break during the summer. I'm trying to get back into some kind of routine, but I'm not promising anything. Thank you so much for being here, and let me know your current reads and the books that you admired this year or the books that you absolutely hated, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Okay, what are my notes here? Cultural appropriation. So the thing is, okay, Zitronen by Valerie Fritsch. Valerie Fritsch. She's not a Fritsch.